Jake Miller sat in the corner of Murphy's bar on Luna Station, staring at the amber liquid in his glass. The whiskey tasted like plastic, but it was strong enough to dull the memories that kept playing in his head. 3 years of fighting in the Martian crater cities had left their mark on him. At 28, he felt much older. The bar was mostly empty except for a few dock workers and a couple of cargo pilots. Jake preferred it that way. He had been on Luna Station for 2 weeks now, waiting for his discharge papers to come through. The Terran-Martian conflict was officially over, and soldiers like him were no longer needed. Jake took another sip of his drink and tried not to think about the red dust of Mars or the sounds of battle that still echoed in his dreams. He had done his job well, maybe too well. The Marine Corps had given him medals and promotions, but all he wanted now was to go home to Earth and find some peace. The bar's television was playing the usual news feeds when suddenly every screen in the place went bright white. Emergency broadcasts began flashing across all channels. Jake looked up, his military training kicking in automatically. "This is not a drill," the announcer said, her voice shaking slightly. "Unknown spacecraft have entered our solar system." "Repeat, unknown spacecraft have entered our solar system." The bar fell silent. Even the drunk cargo pilot stopped talking and stared at the screen. Jake felt his stomach tighten. After 3 years of war between humans, now this, the news feed, switched to live footage from space. Jake had seen plenty of human ships during his time in the military, but these were different. The alien vessels were sleek and curved, like giant silver teardrops floating in the black of space. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The ships appeared without warning near Jupiter's orbit. The reporter continued. "They are moving slowly toward the inner solar system. All military forces have been placed on high alert." Jake's personal communicator buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket and saw a message that made his blood run cold. "Report to Admiral Carter immediately. Emergency recall of all combat personnel." He finished his drink in one gulp and stood up. Around him, other people in the bar were starting to panic. Some were crying. Others were making frantic calls to their families. Jake had seen panic before, and he knew it could spread fast. The walk to the military section of Luna Station took 15 minutes. Jake's mind was racing as he moved through the corridors. The station was buzzing with activity. Soldiers were running everywhere, and he could hear the sound of ships launching from the docking bays. Admiral Lisa Carter was waiting for him in the briefing room along with about 20 other soldiers. Jake recognized some of them from various campaigns. These were all experienced combat veterans, people who had proven themselves in battle. "Sit down, everyone," Admiral Carter said. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had earned respect through decades of service. "I know you all have questions, but let me give you the facts first." She activated a holographic display that showed the alien fleet. The ships were even more impressive up close. Their hulls seemed to shimmer with some kind of energy field. 30 minutes ago, these ships sent us a message," Carter continued. "They call themselves the Zephyrian Confederation. They claim to come in peace and want to establish diplomatic relations with humanity." Jake felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. At least they weren't shooting yet. However, Carter added, "They have made a specific request. They want to meet with our greatest warriors before any formal talks begin. They say it's some kind of tradition among their people. A Navy captain named Ryan Brooks raised his hand. What kind of tradition, Admiral? They call it the Warriors' Census, Carter explained. Apparently, when new civilizations meet, they share information about their military capabilities through their champions. It's supposed to build trust and prevent misunderstandings. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He didn't like where this was going. Why us? Asked an Air Force colonel named Kate Sullivan. There are plenty of other good soldiers. Carter looked around the room at each of them. Because according to their research of our public records, you people have the highest confirmed combat scores in human military history. They specifically requested to meet with our most effective fighters. Jake's stomach dropped. He knew his record was impressive, but he had hoped to leave all that behind. The things he had done on Mars were necessary, but they weren't something he wanted to be remembered for. The meeting will take place aboard their main ship, Carter continued. It's voluntary, but I'm hoping some of you will agree to go. This could determine how humanity is treated by these aliens for generations to come. The room was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked around at the other soldiers. They all had the same expression. He probably had tired veterans who just wanted to go home. Finally, Ryan Brooks spoke up. What exactly would we have to do? Just talk, Carter said. Share your experiences. Answer their questions about human military doctrine. Think of it as a cultural exchange. Kate Sullivan nodded slowly. I'll do it. Someone has to represent the Air Force. Brooks agreed next. The Navy should be represented too. All eyes turned to Jake. He really didn't want to do this, but he could see the hope in Admiral Carter's eyes. She needed him, and despite everything, he was still a soldier. Fine, he said quietly. I'll go. Carter smiled for the first time since he had entered the room. Thank you all. The alien ship will arrive at Earth's orbit tomorrow. We'll have a full briefing in the morning. As the meeting broke up, Jake wondered what he was getting himself into. He had fought against human enemies who used human weapons and human tactics. These aliens were completely unknown. Their technology was obviously advanced, and their intentions were still unclear. He walked back toward his quarters, thinking about the strange turn his life had taken. A few hours ago, his biggest worry was what to do with the rest of his life. Now he was about to meet beings from another world. The corridors of Luna Station were still busy with activity, but Jake barely noticed. His mind was already preparing for tomorrow, trying to figure out what these aliens might want to know about human warfare. He just hoped he could represent his species well without revealing too much about humanity's capacity for violence. Little did he know that his combat record would soon shock an entire galaxy. The next morning came too quickly for Jake. He had barely slept. His mind racing with questions about what the aliens wanted and what he should tell them. The military quarters on Luna Station were not comfortable, but he had slept in much worse places during the war on Mars. Admiral Carter had called another briefing for 0800 hours. Jake arrived early and found the same group of soldiers from the night before, plus a few new faces. Everyone looked tired and nervous. Good morning, Carter said as she entered the room. I hope you all got some rest, because today is going to be interesting. She activated the holographic display again, showing new footage of the alien fleet. The ships had moved closer to Earth during the night and were now visible to telescopes on the planet's surface. We've been in constant communication with the Zephyrians since yesterday, Carter explained. Their leader, someone called Ambassador Velter, has been very polite but also very specific about what they want. Jake leaned forward in his chair. What kind of specifics? They want to know about our military history, our weapons, our tactics, Carter said, but they're not asking for classified information. They seem more interested in individual combat records and personal experiences. Ryan Brooks frowned. That seems like an odd way to learn about a military. That's what I thought too, Carter agreed. But according to our xenobiology team, many alien species might have very different ideas about warfare than we do. Dr. Alex Chen thinks they might focus more on individual fighters rather than large armies. Kate Sullivan raised her hand. How many of us are they expecting to meet? 3, Carter said. They specifically requested our top 3 warriors from different service branches. Captain Brooks will represent the Navy, Colonel Sullivan will represent the Air Force, and Sergeant Miller will represent the Marines and Ground Forces. Jake felt his stomach tighten again. He really didn't want to be the face of human ground combat, but he understood why he had been chosen. His record from the Martian campaign was extensive, and ground forces had done most of the heavy fighting in that war. What about the army? Asked one of the other soldiers. Carter shook her head. The aliens were very specific. They want the 3 individuals with the highest confirmed combat effectiveness ratings. That's you 3. She handed each of them a data pad with information about the meeting. Jake scanned through his quickly and saw details about the alien ship they would be visiting, basic information about the Furian culture, and a list of suggested topics for discussion. The meeting will take place this afternoon, Carter continued. A shuttle will take you to their main ship at 1,400 hours. You'll be accompanied by Dr. Chen and a small diplomatic team. Jake looked up from his data pad. How long will we be there? Probably several hours, Carter said. The Zephyrians mentioned that this warrior census is an important ritual for them. They want to take their time and do it properly. Brooks was reading through his own information. It says here that they've been spacefaring for over 2,000 years. Their confederation includes 12 different species. That's right, Carter confirmed. This isn't just a meeting with one alien race. We are potentially joining a large community of civilizations. The weight of that statement settled over the room. Jake realized that what they said and did today could affect humanity's future in ways they couldn't even imagine. Are there any rules we should follow? Sullivan asked. Things we shouldn't talk about? Carter nodded. Dr. Chen will brief you on basic cultural protocols. The main thing is to be honest but not to volunteer information about our most advanced weapons or defensive capabilities. Let them ask questions and answer what you're comfortable with. Jake studied the information about the Furian culture. They seemed to value honor and courage above all else. Their society was built around the idea that the strongest should lead and protect the weaker. It reminded him a bit of old military traditions, What do we know about their military? He asked. Not much, Carter admitted. Their ships are obviously advanced, but they haven't shown us any weapons. They claim to be peaceful, but they must have some way of defending themselves in a galaxy with 12 different species. The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from alien etiquette to emergency procedures. Jake tried to pay attention, but his mind kept wandering to the battles on Mars. He wondered what the aliens would think of human warfare when they heard about it. After the briefing, Jake had a few hours to prepare. He cleaned his dress uniform and made sure his medals were properly arranged. The aliens had specifically asked to see their military decorations, apparently as a way of understanding human hierarchy and achievement. Dr. Chen found him in the corridor as he was heading to lunch. She was a small woman with intelligent eyes who had been studying alien communication for most of her career. "Sergeant Miller," she said, "could I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course, Doctor." They walked to a quiet observation lounge where they could see Earth hanging in space below them. Chen looked nervous, which didn't make Jake feel any better about the upcoming meeting. "I wanted to talk to you about the warrior census," she said. "Based on our communications with the Zephyrians, I think their concept of warfare might be very different from ours." Jake sat down across from her. "Different how?" "They seem to think in terms of individual combat," Chen explained. "Personal duels, single fighters facing each other. The way they ask questions suggests they don't understand modern military tactics, so they don't know about combined arms operations or coordinated attacks." Chen shook her head. "I don't think so. When they ask about kill counts, they seem to be expecting numbers in the dozens or maybe low hundreds. They're thinking about sword fights and personal battles, not artillery strikes or air support." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. His own kill count was much higher than dozens or hundreds. During the Martian campaign, he had coordinated attacks that eliminated entire enemy units. "Should I not mention the bigger operations?" he asked. Chen thought for a moment. "Be honest if they ask directly, but maybe start with smaller examples. Let them get used to the idea of human warfare gradually." The time passed quickly, and before Jake knew it, he was sitting in a shuttle with Brooks, Sullivan, Chen, and 2 diplomats, heading toward the alien mothership. Through the shuttle's windows, he could see the massive vessel growing larger as they approached. The ship was even more impressive up close. It was at least 5 kilometers long and seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that shifted and flowed in the light. Jake had seen some amazing human technology during his military career, but this was beyond anything humans had built. "Remember," Chen said as they prepared to dock, "be respectful, be honest, and try not to overwhelm them with too much information at once." Jake nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was going to be more complicated than anyone expected. The aliens wanted to know about human warriors, but they had no idea what human warfare really looked like. As the shuttle docked with the alien ship, Jake wondered if humanity was about to reveal something about itself that would change everything. The inside of the alien ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The walls seemed to glow with a soft blue light, and the corridors curved in ways that made him feel slightly dizzy. Everything was smooth and organic looking, as if the ship had been grown rather than built. Ambassador Velter met them at the airlock. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. His movements were graceful and fluid, and when he spoke, his voice had a musical quality that the translation device couldn't quite capture. "Welcome aboard the Harmony of Stars," Velter said, bowing slightly. "We are honored to meet Earth's greatest warriors." Jake felt uncomfortable being called a great warrior, but he returned the bow as Dr. Chen had instructed. Brooks and Sullivan did the same. "Thank you for inviting us," Brooks said. "We are honored to be here." Velter led them through the ship's corridors, past rooms filled with strange equipment and aliens Jake didn't recognize. Some looked like the Zephyrians, while others were completely different. He saw beings that looked like walking crystals, others that seemed to be made of liquid metal, and some that reminded him of giant insects. The Confederation has representatives from all 12 member species aboard this ship, Velter explained as they walked. "Many of them are eager to meet humans and learn about your military traditions." They entered a massive chamber that took Jake's breath away. The room was at least 100 meters across and 50 meters high. The walls were transparent, showing the stars outside, and the floor was made of the same glowing material as the corridors. Hundreds of aliens filled the chamber, arranged in groups by species. Each group had elaborate displays showing what looked like battle scenes and warrior portraits. The air hummed with dozens of different languages being translated simultaneously. "This is the council chamber," Velter said proudly. "Here we conduct the warrior census whenever a new species joins our confederation." Jake looked around at all the different aliens in their displays. He could see holographic battles showing individual fighters facing off against each other with swords, energy, weapons, and strange martial arts. Everything seemed to focus on single combat between warriors. "How does this work exactly?" Sullivan asked. Velter gestured toward the center of the chamber, where a raised platform waited. "Each species presents their greatest warriors and their achievements. We share stories of courage and skill, so that all may learn from each other's traditions." A being that looked like a giant praying mantis approached them. Its voice came through the translator as a series of clicks and buzzes. "I am War Leader Zix of the Krasen Hives," it said. "We are eager to learn of human combat prowess." More aliens gathered around them, all chattering excitedly in their various languages. Jake felt overwhelmed by the attention. These beings had been fighting wars among the stars for thousands of years, and they wanted to learn from humans who had barely left their own solar system. Velter raised his hand for silence. "Let us begin the ceremony. Each species will present their warriors in order of membership. The Krasen have been part of our confederation the longest, so they will go first." The giant mantis liked being moved to the central platform. The chamber fell silent as Zix began to speak. "The Krasen are a warrior race," he said, his translated voice echoing through the chamber. "We have fought for the honor of the hive for over 3,000 years. Holographic images appeared above the platform, showing Krasen warriors in individual combat. Jake watched as the insect-like beings fought with energy weapons and razor-sharp claws against various enemies. "Our Greatest warrior, Hive champion Nelcrease, achieved victory in over 400 personal duels. Zix continued. She conquered 12 star systems through single combat with their champions. The assembled aliens murmured appreciatively. 400 victories seemed to impress them greatly. Next came the crystalline beings called the Vorsuk. Their representative was a tall crystal formation that rang like a bell when it moved. The Vorsuk understand the art of siege warfare. It sang in a voice like wind chimes. Our crystal singer Harmos reduced 6 fortress worlds to rubble through the power of resonant destruction. The holographic display showed massive crystal beings creating some kind of sonic attack that could shatter entire buildings. The narrator mentioned that Harmos had personally destroyed over 2,000 enemy fortifications. One by one, each species presented their warriors. Jake noticed a pattern. They all focused on individual achievement in personal combat. The highest kill counts he heard were in the low thousands, and those were from species that had been fighting for centuries. The liquid metal beings called the Flux showed warriors who could change shape to defeat their enemies. Their champion had won 800 battles by adapting to any fighting style. A species of energy beings presented a warrior who could phase through solid matter, allowing him to assassinate over 600 enemy leaders. Even the most impressive presentations focused on what a single individual had accomplished. Jake began to understand what Dr. Chen had meant about different concepts of warfare. Finally, it was humanity's turn. Velter gestured for them to approach the platform, and now, he announced, we welcome our newest potential members, the humans of Earth. Jake's heart was pounding as they walked to the center of the chamber. Hundreds of alien eyes watched them with curiosity and interest. He had faced enemy fire on Mars without feeling this nervous. Dr. Chen had suggested they start with the Navy and Air Force, since those seemed more similar to what the aliens expected. Brooks stepped forward first. I am Captain Ryan Brooks of the Earth Navy, he said, his voice steady despite the circumstances. I commanded the destroyer Vigilant during the Titan campaign. The holographic display showed images of space combat, with human ships engaging Martian vessels near Saturn's moons. Brooks described his tactics and the 17 enemy ships he had destroyed during the campaign. The aliens listened politely, but Jake could tell they weren't particularly impressed. 17 kills over several years of fighting was respectable by their standards, but not exceptional. Sullivan went next, describing her aerial combat record. She had shot down 86 enemy aircraft during various battles on Mars. Again, the aliens seemed interested but not amazed. Then it was Jake's turn. He stepped forward, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien gazes upon him. I am Sergeant Jake Miller of the Earth Marines, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I served 3 years in the Martian crater cities. Velter looked at him with curiosity. And what was your personal elimination count, Warrior Jake? Jake hesitated. He had known this question was coming, but he still wasn't sure how to answer it. The number in his official record included everyone killed as a result of operations he had planned, coordinated, or called in support for. It wasn't just people he had shot personally. My confirmed count is 247. Oh, he said quietly. The chamber fell completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in the sudden quiet. Every alien in the room was staring at him with expressions he couldn't read. Velter's translator seemed to malfunction for a moment, making strange static noises before repeating the number. In various alien languages, 247, 000, Velter whispered, his musical voice cracking slightly. Jake nodded, wondering if he had just made a terrible mistake. The silence stretched on, becoming more uncomfortable with each passing second. Then the chamber erupted into chaos as every alien began talking at once. The chaos in the chamber was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. Hundreds of aliens were talking, shouting, or making whatever sounds their species used to express shock and disbelief. The translation systems were overwhelmed, creating a mix of overlapping voices in dozens of languages. Velter raised his hands, trying to restore order, but it took several minutes before the noise died down to a manageable level. His large dark eyes kept darting back to Jake, as if he couldn't quite believe what he had heard. Perhaps, Velter said carefully, there was an error in translation. Could you repeat your elimination count? Jake looked at Brooks and Sullivan, who both looked as stunned as the aliens. Dr. Chen was frantically checking her translation device, probably hoping she had misheard the number. 247, 000 confirmed eliminations over 3 years, Jake repeated, speaking slowly and clearly. The chamber erupted again, but this time Velter was ready. He activated some kind of sound dampening field that forced everyone to lower their voices. War Leader Zix of the Krasen pushed his way through the crowd, his insect-like head tilting as he studied Jake intently. This cannot be accurate. Zix clicked through his translator. Our entire warrior caste has never achieved such numbers across our entire 3,000-year history. One of the crystal beings rang out in harmonious disagreement. The translation must be flawed. No single organic being could eliminate so many opponents. Jake felt like he was on trial. These beings had welcomed him as a fellow warrior, but now they were looking at him like he was some kind of monster. I think there might be a misunderstanding, Dr. Chen said, stepping forward. Perhaps we should explain how human warfare works, but Velter held up a hand to stop her. No, I wish to hear this from Warrior Jake himself. Please, describe how you achieved this count. Jake took a deep breath. He had been dreading this moment since they had boarded the alien ship. How could he explain modern warfare to beings who thought in terms of personal duels? It wasn't just me fighting alone, he began. Human warfare is different from what you've shown here. We fight in large groups, using technology to coordinate our attacks. The aliens listened intently, but Jake could see confusion in their expressions. I was a forward observer and tactical coordinator, he continued. My job was to identify enemy positions and call in fire support from artillery, aircraft, and orbital platforms. Velter's translator seemed to struggle with some of the military terms. Fire support? Long-range weapons, Jake explained. Cannons that can shoot across many kilometers, aircraft that drop explosives, ships in orbit that can strike targets on the ground. The crystal being that had spoken earlier made a sound like breaking glass. You directed other warriors in battle? Not exactly, Jake said, trying to find words they would understand. I used instruments to locate enemy forces, then I called for weapons to strike those locations. Sometimes it was a small group of enemies, sometimes it was larger formations. Brooks stepped forward to help. Human military doctrine emphasizes combined operations. Individual soldiers work together as part of larger units, using technology to multiply their effectiveness. War leader Zix moved closer to Jake, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's light. You speak of eliminating enemies you could not even see? Yes, Jake said. In the crater cities on Mars, most combat took place at long range. I would use sensors to detect enemy movements, then coordinate strikes against their positions. The aliens began talking among themselves again, but this time their voices carried a different tone. Instead of disbelief, Jake heard something that might have been fear. A new alien approached the platform. This one looked almost human except for its silver skin and completely black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was calm and measured. I am Counselor Zess of the Neutral Observers, it said. We have been monitoring this exchange with great interest. Warrior Jake, you speak of weapons that can strike across great distances. How great! Jake looked at Dr. Chen, who nodded encouragingly. Artillery can reach targets 50 kilometers away. Aircraft can strike anywhere on a planet. Orbital weapons can hit any point on a world's surface. The silver-skinned alien's expression didn't change, but Jake noticed that its hands were trembling slightly. And how many enemies might be eliminated in a single strike? It depends on the target, Jake said. A small enemy patrol might be 3 or 4 soldiers. A fortified position could have dozens. During the siege of New Shanghai, I coordinated a strike against an enemy battalion that was concentrated in underground tunnels. How many enemies were in this battalion? Counselor Zess asked. Jake remembered that day clearly. It had been one of the worst battles of the war, with Martian forces dug into a network of mining tunnels beneath the city. About 800. The chamber fell silent again. Even the background humming of the ship's systems seemed to fade away. 800 enemies eliminated in a single action? Velter whispered. The orbital strike collapsed the tunnel system, Jake explained. It was a military necessity. They were using the tunnels to launch attacks against civilian areas. Sullivan decided to add her perspective. Human warfare has evolved to use technology as a force multiplier. A single pilot in an advanced fighter can engage multiple enemy aircraft simultaneously, and ground forces use vehicles, artillery, and air support to engage enemies across vast areas, Brooks added. Individual combat is rare in human warfare. War leader Zix was making a sound that his translator rendered as nervous chittering. You speak of warfare that we do not understand. Where is the honor in striking enemies who cannot fight back? Jake felt a flash of anger at that comment. Honor? There's no honor in war. There's only survival and completing the mission. Those enemies I called strikes against were shooting at my friends, at civilians, at anyone they could reach. Dr. Chen touched his arm gently, reminding him to stay calm. Jake took a breath and continued in a steadier voice. Human warfare isn't about personal glory or individual achievement. It's about protecting people and accomplishing objectives using whatever means are necessary. The aliens around the platform were backing away from Jake now. He could see fear in their alien faces, and that hurt more than he had expected. These beings had welcomed him as a fellow warrior, but now they saw him as something else entirely. Velter was the first to speak again. Warrior Jake, this count of 247,000. This includes all enemies eliminated through your coordination and direction? Yes, Jake said simply. And this is considered normal for human warriors? Jake shook his head. No, my count was higher than most because I served in some of the worst fighting. But the methods I used are standard for all human military forces. Counselor Zis stepped closer to the platform. How many human warriors possess similar capabilities? Jake thought about all the soldiers he had served with, all the people he had trained alongside. Every human soldier learns these tactics. Some specialize in different areas, but the basic principles are the same. The silver-skinned alien turned to address the entire chamber. The implications of this are staggering. If a single human warrior can coordinate the elimination of hundreds of thousands of enemies, what could their entire military accomplish? The question hung in the air like a threat. Jake realized that what he had intended as an explanation of human military doctrine was being received as something much more ominous. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity approached warfare in ways they had never imagined. The silence that followed Counselor Zith's question was heavy and threatening. Jake could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazes pressing down on him. What had started as a cultural exchange was rapidly becoming something much more serious. Velter was the first to break the silence. His musical voice tight with concern. Warrior Jake, I must ask you to be completely honest with us. This number you have given us, is it accurate according to your military's official records? Jake nodded. Yes, it's from my service record. Every elimination I coordinated or directed is documented. A Flux representative flowed closer to the platform, its liquid middle body shifting nervously. In 3 years of service, you personally coordinated the elimination of more enemies than our entire species has lost in 5 centuries of warfare. War Leader Zix was clicking rapidly, which his translator rendered as agitated speech. The Krasin have been warriors for 3,000 years. Our greatest heroes have fought in hundreds of battles, yet none have achieved even a tenth of this human's count. Dr. Chen stepped forward, trying to calm the situation. I think we need to understand that human warfare operates on a different scale than what you're used to. Our conflicts involve millions of soldiers and affect entire planets. The crystal being that had spoken earlier made a sound like shattering ice. Millions? You speak of millions of warriors? Brooks nodded. The Terran-Martian conflict involved over 12 million military personnel across both sides. The fighting lasted 4 years and took place on multiple worlds. The aliens began talking among themselves in hushed, frightened tones. Jake could hear the translation system struggling to keep up with the rapid exchanges in dozens of languages. A new voice cut through the chatter. It belonged to a tall, graceful being with features that reminded Jake of classical earth sculptures. When it spoke, its voice carried the authority of command. I am Fleet Admiral Killer of the Ashanti Republic, it said. We are the primary military force within the Confederation. I must ask some direct questions about human military capabilities. Jake felt Brooks and Sullivan tense beside him. This was exactly the kind of interrogation they had hoped to avoid. Admiral Keller continued without waiting for permission. You mentioned orbital weapons and artillery with 50-kilometer range. What is the maximum range of your longest-range weapons? Dr. Chen looked nervous, but Jake decided that honesty was probably their best policy at this point. Intercontinental missiles can reach targets on the other side of a planet. Some space-based weapons can strike targets in other star systems. The chamber erupted again, but this time the sound was different. Instead of excited chatter, Jake heard what sounded like panic. Interstellar weapons? Admiral Keller's voice rose in pitch. You possess weapons that can strike across light years. Some experimental systems, Sullivan said carefully. They're primarily defensive in nature. Jake was beginning to understand how their technology sounded to these aliens. The Confederation species seemed to fight battles that were more like large-scale duels between champions. The idea of weapons that could destroy enemies across vast distances was foreign to them. Counselor Zess moved to the center of the platform, raising his hands for attention. I believe we are dealing with a fundamental misunderstanding of military philosophy. Humans, it seems, approach warfare as a technological and logistical challenge rather than a test of individual valor. Velter looked confused. But where is the honor in such methods? How does a warrior prove himself if he never faces his enemies directly? Jake felt a surge of frustration. Honor doesn't stop bullets or protect civilians. A dead hero can't save anyone. War leader Zex clicked angrily. You speak as if war is merely a technical problem to be solved efficiently. That's exactly what it is, Jake replied. War is about achieving objectives while minimizing your own casualties. Everything else is just ego. The chamber fell silent again as the aliens processed this statement. Jake realized he had just challenged thousands of years of their military tradition. A small, furry creature that reminded Jake of a teddy bear stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice was high and squeaky, but the translation device gave it a dignified tone. I am Scholar Pep of the Academic Guild, it said. We study military history across all member species. Never have we encountered a civilization that treats warfare as purely a logistical exercise. Dr. Chen saw an opportunity to explain. Human military doctrine evolved through thousands of years of increasingly destructive conflicts. We learned that individual heroism, while admirable, is less effective than coordinated teamwork and superior technology. Admiral Keller was studying holographic displays that had appeared around him, apparently reviewing data about human military capabilities. These weapons you describe: artillery, aircraft, orbital platforms, they can all be operated by individual humans? Yes, Brooks said, though they require extensive training and support systems. How many humans know how to operate such weapons? Jake exchanged glances with his companions. This was getting into sensitive territory, but the aliens were clearly going to find out eventually. Millions, he said finally. Most human adults receive basic military training, and millions more serve in active military units. The teddy bear-like Scholar Pep made a sound that might have been choking. Millions of warriors trained in the use of long-range destructive weapons? We prefer to call them soldiers, Sullivan said. Warriors sounds too personal. Velter was looking at Jake with something that might have been awe or terror. Warrior Jake, forgive me, Soldier Jake, if your entire species approaches warfare with these methods, what would happen if humanity decided to conquer other worlds? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake realized that everything he had said was being evaluated not as cultural curiosity, but as a potential threat assessment. Humanity doesn't conquer other worlds, he said firmly. The Terran-Martian conflict was a civil war between human colonies. We fight for self-defense and to protect civilians. Admiral Keller's expression didn't change. But you possess the capability to do so. Jake couldn't deny that. Human military technology was clearly far beyond what these aliens were used to dealing with. If humanity had wanted to conquer other species, they probably could have done so easily. Capability and intent are different things, Dr. Chen said. Humanity seeks peaceful relations with other species. War Leader X was clicking rapidly again. The Krasen have faced many enemies over the millennia. Never have we encountered a species with such efficient methods of warfare. Counselor Zess was making notes on some kind of holographic tablet. This information will need to be shared with the full Confederation Council. The implications are too significant to ignore. Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. What had started as a friendly cultural exchange was turning into something that could determine humanity's future relationship with an entire galaxy of alien civilizations. And based on the fear he was seeing in alien faces around the chamber, that relationship might not be as friendly as anyone had hoped. The atmosphere in the chamber had changed completely. What had begun as a ceremonial exchange between warriors had become an intense interrogation. Alien military analysts surrounded the platform where Jake stood, their questions coming faster than the translation systems could handle. Admiral Keller activated a holographic interface that projected Jake's image and voice to every corner of the massive chamber. Soldier Jake, you mentioned coordinating strikes against enemy battalions. Please describe the process in detail. Jake looked at Dr. Chen, who nodded encouragingly despite her obvious nervousness. It depends on the situation. In urban combat, like the crater cities, I would use sensors to track enemy movements through buildings and tunnels. What kind of sensors? Asked a floating jellyfish-like being whose species Jake hadn't seen before. Thermal imaging, motion detectors, electromagnetic scanners, Jake replied. We can track individual soldiers through walls and underground. The jellyfish creature posed with different colors, which its translator rendered as excited speech. You can observe enemies without them knowing they are being watched? Yes. Modern battlefield awareness systems can monitor large areas simultaneously. War Leader Zix moved closer, his compound eyes reflecting the chamber's light. Once you locate these enemies, what happens next? Jake took a breath, knowing this was where things would get really uncomfortable for his audience. I would assess the target and determine the appropriate response. For small groups, maybe a drone strike or sniper fire. For larger concentrations, artillery or air support. Explain. Artillery demanded a rock-like being whose voice sounded like grinding stone. Cannons that fire explosive shells across long distances, Brooks said, trying to help. They can destroy buildings or eliminate enemy positions from kilometers away. Scholar Pep was taking rapid notes on his device. And how many enemies might be eliminated by a single artillery shell? Jake thought about the various missions he had called in. It depends on the target. A direct hit on a building might eliminate everyone inside, anywhere from a few individuals to several dozen. The chamber filled with nervous chatter. Jake could see aliens backing away from the platform, their body language suggesting fear or revulsion. Counselor Zess raised his hand for quiet. You mentioned air support. Describe this capability. Sullivan stepped forward to answer this one. Aircraft can carry various weapons, missiles, bombs, energy weapons. A single fighter can engage multiple ground targets or enemy aircraft. How many targets can one aircraft destroy? Asked the jellyfish being. In optimal conditions, a single bomber could eliminate hundreds of ground targets, Sullivan said. During the Battle of Olympus Ridge, my squadron destroyed an entire enemy armored division. Admiral Killer's expression became even more grim. An entire division? How many enemies was that? About 3,000 soldiers and their vehicles, Sullivan replied. The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear the humming of the ship's systems again. Every alien in the chamber was staring at Sullivan with expressions of horror. 3,000 eliminated by how many of your aircraft? War Leader Zix asked quietly. 12 fighters, Sullivan said. The operation took about 6 hours. A new voice cut through the shocked silence. It belonged to a tall, ethereal being that seemed to be made of pure energy contained in a roughly humanoid shape. I am Sage Luminarer of the Transcended, it said, its voice like music made of light. We have observed warfare across the galaxy for millennia. Never have we witnessed such industrial efficiency in combat. Jake felt like he was being put on trial for war crimes. These beings clearly saw human military methods as something monstrous. You keep using that word industrial, he said. War is industrial. It's about logistics, supply lines, intelligence, and coordination. Individual heroics don't win battles. The energy being flickered brighter. But where is the skill? The artistry? The test of personal worth that defines a true warrior? Skill is knowing when and how to apply overwhelming force, Jake replied. Artistry is coordinating complex operations across multiple units. Personal worth is measured by mission success and keeping your people alive. Dr. Chen could see that the interrogation was not going well. Perhaps we should explain the context of these operations. Human warfare developed in response to increasingly destructive technologies. Admiral Killer activated new holographic displays. Show us the most destructive weapon in your arsenal. Jake, Brooks, and Sullivan exchanged glances. This was definitely entering classified territory, but they were already in too deep to back out now. Strategic nuclear weapons, Brooks said. Finally, though they're considered weapons of last resort, describe their capabilities, the Admiral demanded. Brooks looked uncomfortable. A single warhead can destroy an entire city. The largest ones could eliminate everything within a 100-kilometer radius. The chamber erupted in chaos again. This time, several aliens actually fled toward the exits. Those who remained looked at the humans with a mixture of terror and disgust. Velter was making sounds that his translator couldn't interpret, just rendering them as distressed vocalizations. When order was finally restored, Scholar Pip asked the question that everyone was thinking. How many of these city-destroying weapons do humans possess? The three humans looked at each other again. Dr. Chen was shaking her head slightly, but Jake realized that hiding the truth at this point would probably make things worse. Thousands, he said quietly. This time, the silence was absolute. Even the ship's background noise seemed to stop. Counselor Zess was the first to speak. Thousands of weapons that could destroy entire cities. Most nations maintain nuclear arsenals for defensive purposes, Dr. Chen explained quickly. They serve as deterrents to prevent large-scale conflicts. War Leader Zex was making a sound like grinding metal. You possess the ability to destroy entire worlds, yet you claim to be peaceful? The existence of destructive weapons doesn't make us warlike, Jake said. In fact, they've helped prevent major conflicts for over a century. When everyone knows the cost of war, everyone works harder to avoid it. Admiral Killer was studying his holographic displays with growing alarm. You speak of preventing conflicts, yet you fought a war that lasted 4 years and involved 12 million soldiers. A civil war, Sullivan emphasized, between human colonies that had political disagreements. We don't fight other species. The ethereal sage Luminara flickered rapidly. But you have proven that you could destroy any species that opposed you. Jake felt a surge of frustration. We are not here to threaten anyone. You asked about our military capabilities, so we told you the truth. The truth, War Leader Zix clicked ominously, is that humanity possesses weapons of unimaginable destruction and warriors trained to use them with terrifying efficiency. Dr. Chen stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. Human military doctrine emphasizes restraint and proportional response. We use only the minimum force necessary to achieve our objectives. Counselor Zess was making more notes. Yet Soldier Jake eliminated 247,000 enemies using what you describe as minimum force. Jake realized that every answer they gave only made things worse. The aliens couldn't understand that human warfare was about efficiency rather than glory. To them, the human approach to combat was not just alien, it was horrifying and based on the fear he saw in every alien face around the chamber. Humanity had just revealed itself to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The interrogation continued for another hour, with alien military analysts asking increasingly detailed questions about human weapons, tactics, and capabilities. Jake felt exhausted from trying to explain concepts that these beings simply couldn't grasp. Finally, Dr. Chen managed to call for a recess. The aliens reluctantly agreed, and the humans were escorted to a smaller chamber where they could speak privately. This is going badly, Brooks said as soon as they were alone. They're treating us like we're some kind of galactic threat. Sullivan slumped into one of the alien chairs, which adjusted automatically to her body shape. Can you blame them? From their perspective, we just described weapons and tactics that are beyond their comprehension. Jake was pacing back and forth, his frustration evident. They asked for the truth, so we gave it to them. How were we supposed to know they'd react like this? Dr. Chen was reviewing her notes, trying to understand what had gone wrong. I think the problem is that we're operating from completely different concepts of what warfare means. She activated a holographic display that showed recordings from the alien presentations earlier. Look at how they fight. Individual champions, personal duels, honor-based combat. Their highest kill counts are in the hundreds. So, Jake asked, so, to them, you're not a soldier, you're something unprecedented. A single being who has eliminated more enemies than their greatest heroes ever imagined possible. Brooks studied the alien combat footage. Their weapons seemed designed for personal combat. Energy swords, individual armor systems, single-pilot fighters. Nothing we'd recognize as modern military equipment. Exactly, Chen said. They've never developed the concept of industrial warfare. They don't understand combined arms operations, logistics chains, or force multiplication through technology. Jake stopped pacing. You're saying they still fight like it's the Middle Ages? Worse, Chen replied. They fight like it's ancient mythology. Individual heroes facing each other in single combat while armies watch. Sullivan was studying the recordings of the crystal beings. Look at their siege warfare. They're destroying fortifications one at a time, with individual warriors using personal abilities. No artillery, no coordinated assault, no tactical support. The door chimed, and Velter entered with several other aliens. His usual graceful demeanor was gone, replaced by obvious tension. Dr. Chen, he said, the council has requested that I clarify some points about human military philosophy. Chen gestured for them to sit. Of course. What would you like to know? Velter activated a small recording device. When humans engage in warfare, do individual soldiers fight alone or as part of larger groups? Always as part of larger groups, Chen explained. Human military doctrine emphasizes teamwork and coordination above individual achievement. A small, rodent-like alien that Jake hadn't seen before squeaked through its translator. But surely your greatest warriors are recognized for personal prowess? Brooks shook his head. Human military decorations are awarded for leadership, tactical skill, and mission success, not for individual kill counts. Velter looked confused. Then why do you track elimination numbers if they are not important? Jake decided to answer this one. For intelligence purposes, we need to know how effective our operations are. But the numbers aren't about personal glory, they're about mission assessment. The rodent alien twitched nervously. In our culture, a warrior's worth is measured by the enemies he has personally defeated in fair combat. What's fair about combat? Jake asked. The point is to win while minimizing your own casualties. You use every advantage you can get. This statement caused another round of distressed sounds from the aliens. Velter's musical voice became strained. Soldier, Jake, you speak as if there are no rules in warfare. There are rules, Sullivan interjected. Rules about protecting civilians, treating prisoners humanely, minimizing unnecessary destruction. But those rules exist to limit war's cruelty, not to make it fair. Dr. Chen could see that they needed to bridge this cultural gap more carefully. Perhaps it would help if we explained how human warfare evolved. She activated the chamber's holographic system and began showing images from Earth's military history. For thousands of years, humans fought in small groups with personal weapons. Individual skill mattered greatly. The images showed ancient battles with swords and spears, individual warriors facing each other in single combat. The aliens relaxed slightly, recognizing familiar concepts. But as our technology advanced, we learned that coordinated group tactics were more effective than individual heroics. Chen continued. The display showed the evolution of human warfare, from medieval battles to gunpowder armies to mechanized warfare to modern combined operations. Each advancement made individual combat less important and coordination more critical, she explained. By the time we reached the space age, warfare had become a technological and logistical challenge. Velter studied the images carefully. So humans evolved beyond personal combat too. What would you call it? Systems warfare, Brooks said. Multiple platforms working together to achieve objectives. No single individual is expected to face enemies alone. The rodent alien was still twitching. But this eliminates the opportunity for warriors to prove their worth through personal courage. Jake felt another surge of frustration. Courage isn't about fighting fair. It's about doing your job when people are shooting at you. It's about making decisions that save lives. Dr. Chen showed more images of human military operations. Notice that human soldiers rarely fight alone. They operate in teams, with backup from other teams, supported by specialists and technology. It's about redundancy and mutual support. Sullivan added, if one element fails, others can compensate. No single person carries the full burden of mission success. Velter was beginning to understand. So when Soldier Jake eliminated 247,000 enemies, he was not acting as a lone warrior but as part of a larger system? Exactly, Jake said. I was one small part of a massive military operation involving thousands of people. My job was to coordinate fire support and intelligence, not to fight enemies personally. The aliens exchanged glances, communicating in ways the humans couldn't interpret. Finally, Velter spoke again. This explains much, but it also raises new concerns. If individual humans are merely components in a larger military system, what are the capabilities of that system as a whole? Dr. Chen realized they had just moved from explaining individual capabilities to revealing the scope of human military organization. The aliens were starting to understand that Jake wasn't unusually dangerous. He was typical of what humans could do when they worked together. And that realization was going to be even more terrifying than Jake's individual kill count. The cultural gap between humanity and the Confederation was wider than anyone had imagined. The aliens valued individual prowess and honor in combat, while humans had evolved warfare into a scientific discipline focused on efficiency and coordination. Now the galaxy was about to learn that humanity didn't produce super warriors, it produced something far more dangerous, an entire species trained to fight as one massive, coordinated military machine. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 6 hours after the human presentation ended. Jake and his companions waited in their guest quarters aboard the alien ship, knowing that their entire species' future was being decided in chambers they weren't allowed to enter. Dr. Chen paced nervously while Brooks and Sullivan tried to rest. Jake stood at the transparent wall, looking out at the stars and wondering what he had done to humanity's chances of peaceful integration into galactic civilization. Do you think we should have lied? He asked finally. Chen stopped pacing. About what? Your service record? Their technology could probably verify anything we told them anyway. Maybe we should have downplayed things, Brooks suggested. Made human capabilities sound less overwhelming. Sullivan shook her head. They would have found out eventually. Better to be honest from the beginning. A soft chime indicated someone was approaching their quarters. Velter entered, accompanied by Counselor Zess and Admiral Killer. The aliens' expressions were difficult to read, but Jake sensed tension in their movements. The Council has reached some preliminary conclusions, Velter announced. We wish to share them with you before making any final decisions, Dr. Chen gestured for them to sit. We're listening. Counselor Zess activated a holographic display showing the Confederation star map. Hundreds of systems were marked with different colors representing the 12-member species. For 2,000 years, the Confederation has maintained peace through a balance of power, Zess explained. Each species contributes military strengths according to their capabilities and traditions. The display zoomed in on specific systems, showing military installations and patrol routes. Our combined fleet consists of approximately 50,000 vessels, Admiral Killer added. Each ship is crewed by individual warriors trained in their species' combat traditions. Jake could see where this was going. And you're wondering how human capabilities would fit into that structure. Velter's musical voice carried a note of concern. Soldier Jake, based on your descriptions of human warfare, a single human military unit could potentially outfight our entire Confederation fleet. That's not. Jake started to protest, then stopped. He realized they might be right. Brooks was studying the display. How many soldiers typically crew your largest warships? Our dreadnoughts carry approximately 1,000 warriors each, Admiral Killer said. They are our most powerful vessels. Sullivan looked at the humans. A single human cruiser carries about 300 crew members, but they control weapon systems that could destroy multiple targets simultaneously. The aliens exchanged glances. Velter continued the explanation. The Council has concluded that humanity represents a completely new category of military capability. Your species doesn't just fight differently, you fight more effectively than anything we've encountered, Dr. Chen leaned forward. What does that mean for our application to join the Confederation? Counselor Zess manipulated the holographic display to show a new section of space near Earth's solar system. The Council has voted unanimously to fast-track humanity's membership, he said, but not as a junior member undergoing evaluation. Jake felt a surge of relief, but this wasn't finished. You will be admitted immediately as a protected military partner with full voting rights and territorial guarantees. The humans looked at each other in confusion. Brooks voiced what they were all thinking. What exactly does that mean? Admiral Keller answered. It means the Confederation will treat humanity as an equal ally rather than a potential subject species. Your territories will be defended by the full might of the Confederation, and any attack on human worlds will be considered an attack on all member species. Jake was starting to understand. You are not just welcoming us, you're making sure we stay friendly. Velter's expression might have been a smile. The Council believes it is better to have humans as allies than as enemies. Dr. Chen was reading through the terms that appeared on her datapad. This treaty offers humanity significant advantages: preferred trading status, technology sharing agreements, territorial expansion rights. Why are you being so generous? Sullivan asked suspiciously. Counselor Z's silver skin seemed to shimmer. Because the alternative is too frightening to contemplate. He manipulated the display to show detailed analyses of human military capabilities compared to Confederation forces. Your Sergeant Miller's kill count exceeds the combined totals of our 50 greatest warriors, Zis explained, and he represents standard human military training, not exceptional ability. Admiral Keller added his own sobering assessment. Our analysts estimate that humanity could conquer the entire Confederation using less than 10% of your described military assets. The statement hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake realized that their honest description of human warfare had fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed his species. We're not conquerors, he said firmly. Humans don't want to rule other species. Velter's voice carried relief. That is what we are counting on. The Council believes that offering partnership rather than subjugation will ensure human cooperation. Brooks was studying the treaty terms. Some of these clauses seem designed to monitor our activities. Of course, Admiral Keller said bluntly. We need to know if human military doctrine changes or if your capabilities increase beyond current levels, Dr. Chen found an interesting section. This grants humanity representation proportional to our military contribution rather than our population. Counselor Zess nodded. Based on our analysis, humanity would effectively control 30% of Confederation military decisions despite being a single species among 12. Jake was beginning to understand the full implications of what had happened. You are not just making us partners, you're making us the dominant military force in the Confederation. By necessity, Velter said. Your capabilities are so far beyond ours that pretending otherwise would be foolish. The holographic display showed new shipping routes and patrol patterns, with human vessels taking primary responsibility for military security. The Council hopes that giving humanity a leadership role in Confederation defense will satisfy any territorial ambitions your species might develop, Admiral Keller explained. Sullivan laughed, but not with humor. You're basically hiring us as galactic security guards, if that is how you choose to view it, Zess said. But you will be very well compensated for the service. Jake walked back to the transparent wall and looked out at the alien fleet. Hundreds of ships representing 12 different species, all of them now essentially under human protection. What happens if we say no? He asked. The aliens exchanged nervous glances. Velter answered carefully. The Council would prefer not to consider that possibility, Dr. Chen was reading through the final sections of the treaty. This is actually a very good deal for humanity. We get immediate access to galactic trade networks, advanced technology, and territorial guarantees, plus the responsibility of protecting an entire galactic civilization, Brooks added. Admiral Keller stood up. The Council requires an answer within 24 hours. This offer will not be extended twice. After the aliens left, the humans sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Jake spoke. I never thought my service record would make humanity into a galactic superpower. Sullivan was reviewing the military cooperation clauses. The funny thing is, They're probably right about our capabilities. Human military doctrine really is that much more advanced than theirs. Brooks nodded. Individual heroics versus coordinated systems warfare. It's not even a fair comparison, Dr. Chen was making notes for her report to Earth. The question is whether humanity is ready for this kind of responsibility. Jake thought about all the soldiers he had served with, all the people who had died in the Martian crater cities, all the lessons humanity had learned through centuries of increasingly destructive warfare. Maybe we're the only species that can handle it, he said finally. We know what war really costs. These aliens still think it's about glory and honor. As the alien ship continued its orbit around Earth, Jake realized that his simple answer to a question about kill counts had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Humanity had come to the stars seeking peaceful contact with other civilizations. Instead, they had discovered that their approach to warfare made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Now they would have to decide whether to use that power to protect others or to dominate them. The choice would define not just humanity's future, but the future of every civilization among the stars. The galaxy had asked for humanity's kill count. The number had stunned them all. Now everyone would have to live with the consequences.